Welcome back once again on this Friday edition of America's Voice Live. I'm David Oliver, in for Steve Gruber today on the show. More information is coming out now about the new head of that Disinformation Governance Board, Nina Jankowicz. Turns out she's a fan of musicals, and here she is singing a song about the dangers of misinformation. And yes, this is real.
It's when a huckster takes some lies and makes them sound precocious by saying them in Congress or a mainstream outlet. So disinformation's origins are slightly less atrocious. It's how you hide a little lie, little lie. It's how you hide a little lie, little lie. It's how you hide a little lie, little lie. When Rudy Giuliani shared that intel from Ukraine, or when TikTok influencers say COVID can cause pain, they're laundering disinfo and we really should take note and not support their lies with our wallet, voice or vote. Oh, information laundering is really quite ferocious. It's when a huckster takes some lies and makes them sound precocious by saying them in Congress or a mainstream outlet. So disinformation's origin seems slightly less atrocious.
Whew. What? Seriously? Not all Democrats are on board with former Democratic presidential candidate Tulsi Gabbard coming out and saying this. Listen.
This is the kind of thing that you see in dictatorships, this ministry of truth, this department of propaganda that the Biden administration has just stood up. And the reason why you see this in dictatorships is because they're afraid of us. They're afraid of the people. They're afraid that we might actually think for ourselves. And so now they've created this body that will do two things. Number one, it'll use taxpayer dollars to work through the mainstream media and flood the airwaves with whatever their propaganda narrative is that they're pushing at any given time and try to drown out anyone with alternate views.
But the mainstream media seems to love the idea of an official disinformation department. Here's CNN's John Harwood tweeting out that what you just heard from Tulsi Gabbard was kooky. I want to bring in right now Real America's Voice anchor and host extraordinaire Amanda Head, of course, our host of Just the News, Not Noise, joining me once again from Los Angeles. Amanda, I'm kind of speechless after her little musical video there. Give me your first thoughts on some of the information we're seeing about this new, Disinformation Governance Board, Nina Jankowicz. There's so much to unpack here on this story.
Yeah, well, our viewers might not realize it, but this song has been out for quite a while. It was a bonus track on Weird Al Yankovic's last album, but it was performed by his sister of a similar name, Weird Gal Jankowicz. That would be Nina. And, she might think that she is channeling Julie Andrews, which I think a lot of people would be insulted by the fact that she's trying to do that. But the only items in her magic carpet bag are, I think, dystopic handbooks by people like Saul Alinsky, Mao, and Lenin, and a rusty pitch pipe that clearly doesn't work anymore. This is exactly what Tulsi Gabbard said. This is the type of thing that you would see in a dictatorial regime, and it's scary, but it's also kind of pathetic. Yeah, I mean, as a singer, I think that when you are taking a government position, utilizing something like this just kind of suppresses your authority a little bit, maybe just damages it.
Yeah. We played that soundbite a minute ago, Amanda, from Department of Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas, where he said, and I wrote it down here, he said, the Disinformation Board, basically the goal is to combat disinformation that affects the safety and security of our homeland. Those were his words. But in a society where you have free speech, isn't what he said subjective?
Yeah, and look, as much as I think that this administration is really doing its best to follow in the way of George Orwell's warnings, I will say that as far as surveillance on citizens, it hasn't really started with Biden. I mean, look no further than the Bush dynasty, George W. Bush, with the Patriot Act and other forms of surveillance, all in the name of counterterrorism. And that's basically what this is. It's all in the name of national security. And yet it's the American citizens who are getting trampled underfoot. It's terrifying. I don't know necessarily if this is actually going to get anywhere. I think that Nina Jankowicz really needs to think of her position as temporary, because I think that there is going to be lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit filed in the name of free speech that will ultimately end up terminating this section of Homeland Security.
And I mean, this really just all
I hope.
goes back down to free speech. And Elon Musk, if this whole deal goes through, is taking Twitter private. The government doesn't have any kind of other investigative body that calls, Aunt Sally's diner management out to testify on Capitol Hill about how they use, pie information by who's buying what. It comes back to free speech here and what you can do with a private company.
Yeah, I'm intrigued at what's been happening over on Twitter the last few days, and I heard an interesting theory because we've seen the follower count and engagement amount for conservatives on Twitter go up. Likewise, we have seen the opposite of that for liberals and a lot of celebrities like Katy Perry, who are Democrat operatives, basically. And what I think is interesting, this is something that one of my favorite podcasters talked about, Tim Pool. He said that Elon Musk not only purchased the platform, but he purchased the evidence. And obviously, Elon Musk hasn't taken over Twitter just yet, assuming that does happen. So I don't think that those follower counts and engagements are happening as a result of Elon Musk implementing anything. I think it's a result of employees wanting to yank certain measures, political measures, from the platform, knowing that Elon Musk is going to open source all of this information. It will probably at some point be publicly audited, and they want to try to bury this evidence. And these are people who went to Capitol Hill, since you brought up Capitol Hill, and testified before Congress that there were no political algorithms that targeted one side or the other.
Yeah, obviously. They're worried. They're running for the hills now. Amanda, I always appreciate your thoughts. You always bring it so eloquently and accurately for us. I want to talk real fast about you and John's show tonight. You're in John's show, Just the News, Not Noise. You're going to be kicking off our rally coverage of tonight's Save America rally featuring President Trump.
Yeah, we are so excited. This is kind of like a crossover hybrid show for us tonight at 6 p.m. Normally we are on air and we have all of our great guests and such. And Trump rallies are usually on Saturdays, but with it being on a Friday, we get to kind of be a part of that coverage. We do have a major breaking story with respect to election integrity in Georgia that we will be talking about at the top of the show. But then we will be, kind of handing it off back and forth between people there on the ground for the rally. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, we're going to have Ed Henry, Karen Turk, April Moss on the ground. You guys are going to kind of anchor our coverage, obviously, with your show from 6 to 7 Eastern. I'm going to come on about 7 Eastern. So it's the whole family is involved tonight. Amanda, great to see you, and have a good weekend, my friend.
You too. See you tonight.
We'll see you later tonight. Thanks so much. After the break, one of my favorite segments.